to root for a school you don't go to over a school that you attend and pay money to go to, I think is pretty crazy.
Go Gators!
Welcome to Fan Take,
The series where we'll be breaking down different fandoms and their impact on the advertising industry.
I'm Ginny, an operations manager here at the agency, and as a football fan myself, I'm pretty excited about this episode. I do want to clear the air. I am not a Falcons fan. I am a Kyle Pitts fan because go Gators, but this is my brother's Falcons jersey.
And I'm Mackenzie. I'm the media department manager at the agency. I am not a football fan. I'm not really any sports fan, to be honest, but I'm very excited for this episode because we have brought in two of the biggest football fans in the office, Chelsea and Jacob.
Woo! Yeah!
Hey guys, I'm Jacob. I'm a senior public relations major. I am the research department manager at the agency, and I'm also an account supervisor. And I am a huge sports fan. I was born into it, so I have a lot of teams. In football, I get heavily criticized a lot for it, but I am a fan of two teams. I root for the Dallas Cowboys and the Cincinnati Bengals, but it wasn't a problem until the Bengals got good. So, when they were bad, everyone was cool with it. In basketball, I'm a Dallas Mavericks fan. In baseball, I'm a Cincinnati Reds fan, and much to the chagrin of everyone else here, in college football and in college sports across the board, I am an Ohio State Buckeyes fan. The Ohio State Buckeyes.
Oh.
Hi, I'm Chelsea McIntyre. I am a strategist at the agency. I am also a senior advertising major, and my fandoms are the Carolina Panthers for football. Only one team because I have loyalties. The Florida Gators and the Miami Heat.
So I know you guys have different stories in terms of like what made you football fans or when you joined the community of football fans. So can you talk a little bit about that and what made you a fan?
Yeah, for sure. So I've always been a sports fan, but up until recently, so I was born in Jamaica and I moved here. And you don't have American football in Jamaica, obviously. So when I moved here, I didn't really care about football. Like, it's annoying. They're just smashing each other against, like, it's stupid to me. That's at least what I thought like 7 years ago. And then I was in high school, and I was like, okay, well, I want to go to the University of Florida. And one of my friends, he was like a Gator, like, born fan, like, for life. Loved it, knew all about it, been to games since he was like 6. And he said to me one day, he was like, what are you going to do in the fall when football's going on? And I was like, what do you mean? I'll just, like, go about, do whatever. He's like, no, you don't understand. In the fall at the University of Florida, football is everything. And I thought, oh, shoot, like, I need to really get myself together then. I need to at least know a little bit something. So, because I didn't even know what downs were, like, I just didn't understand anything. So, I spent that summer watching full-length games, like NFL games, college games, just watching them, like, literally 3-hour-long games. Because I was like, well, I need to know. And by that next year, by junior year, I was basically a pro. That's what I considered myself. Like, I knew it all. I knew everything. I mean, it took me some time to, like, pick up certain rules, like, certain, like, penalties. And even to this day, like, sometimes I'm like, was that a penalty? Was it not? But I think I'm pretty well-versed now versus where I was, like, 5 years ago. So I started being a fan in 2017. And that's, like, how I chose football. I actually started watching the NBA a lot more recently, like, 2 years ago. So I'm not as, like, well-versed on, like, the NBA and basketball. But I'm very, very well-versed, I feel, with football. At least as well-versed as a person who's been watching it for 5 years can be. Yeah.
Wow.
That's like the most research thing that you could have done to like sit down and just like watch games.
Yeah.
Like
Her
that
as a
is very
researcher.
research department of you to do. Yeah.
That's so interesting because, like, I mean, I go to UF, but, like, I also knew it was a big football school, but, like, honestly, I did not care that much. I was like, okay, but that's so, I love that you, like, took the time to, like, get familiar with it, and obviously it worked out, and
Right.
you love it now.
For me, it's kind of the complete opposite. I was born into it. My dad prides himself that he was the manager of his high school football team. So, big sports guy, and I really kind of picked it up as a kid. Obviously, with our little plaque right here, my house is divided. My dad was born in Cincinnati, which is kind of the origin of his Bengals fandom, and similarly, his Ohio State fandom. My mom went to Michigan. So obviously, for those who don't know, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry, in my opinion, I think in most people's opinion, is the greatest rivalry in college football, if not the greatest rivalry in all of sports in America, of American sports. A very, very heated, very contentious rivalry. So when I was there are old pictures of me in Michigan gear when I was like 2 years old, but I ended up gratefully and luckily picking the Ohio State Buckeyes to root for. So again, I was born into it, and I picked my dad's team. So my dad was a Cowboys and a Bengals and Ohio State fan. I picked the same teams. He's also a Cincinnati Reds fan, which is for baseball. It's cool. We actually have 2 baseballs in the Reds Hall of Fame that have been passed down through the family. So it's really cool stuff. And then from there, I started root for the NBA when my dad wasn't a really big basketball fan, but I was like, well, I'm already a Cowboys fan, and there's no team in Cincinnati, so the next best thing is the Dallas Mavericks. And then 2 years later, they ended up winning the NBA championship. So that was like fortuitous luck on that front. But yeah, definitely came from like a full football family. Like all of my my mom's brother also went to Michigan, so there's some inter-family rivalry there too. But yeah, overall it's been a lot of fun, and I was really kind of born into sports that way.
I want everyone out here to know that Jacob would root for the Ohio State Buckeyes over the Gators.
I stand by that.
And he goes to UF.
And he attends the University of Florida.
I haven't shed tears over the Florida Gators, but in my youth I shed tears over the Ohio State Buckeyes. So
That's a lot.
I think it's really, really, it's a funny thing to choose. He said he chose like his dad's teams, and I always wondered why didn't he choose Michigan?
It's his mom's team.
His mom and his mom's brother went to Michigan, and he's saying, it's lucky that he chose Ohio State, but in what I've seen so far this year, last year, Michigan did beat Ohio State. So
you know what? You're right.
I think it would have been in his, I guess in his best interest over the years, maybe, but now I'd say that Michigan's on top, as they should be. And to root for a school you don't go to over a school that you attend and pay money to go to, I think is pretty crazy. But it's his choice, it's his opinions, and I do agree with what he said. You pick your parents' teams or against them, or usually just where you live, depending on the type of stuff. But I just think it's really interesting, his decision-making process and how he came to be the fan of teams that he is a fan of.
To point out, I know this is the part of this show that everyone wanted to get to, where Chelsea and I to really start beefing. And I would like to point out that it is true Michigan has won the last 2 years, and it's good that we're actually having a rivalry again instead of us winning 10 in a row. And I also think it's fair to point out, just for the audience, that the last time Michigan won a national championship outright was 1947. So I've seen Ohio State win twice in my lifetime, which is pretty fantastic, in 2002, 2003, and then 2014, the first college football playoff. I'm waiting for Jim Harbaugh to win the big game. Obviously he has to win a bowl game. I actually don't know if he's done that yet. But yeah, no, it's becoming a good rivalry. This is the type of passion that sports really drives. I think you don't really get in kind of a healthy way in other spaces. You can friendly hate people, and their fan bases. But it's a good rivalry. It really kind of breeds competition.
Yeah. I actually texted Chelsea when Ohio State lost, and I said, "Are we going to be mean to Jacob on Monday?" And she said, "Absolutely." Yeah. I have the receipts.
Right. Absolutely, because I think it was something that was deserved, The night of, I didn't text him. I was like, I'll let him have the weekend, but I will be seeing him on Monday, and we'll chat about it then. And chat we did. So I love to make fun of him for his, teams. I like to, because honestly, I'm not a big Ohio State fan myself. If I were to root for one of them, it would be Michigan. So, yes, I don't really like anything Ohio State. Honestly, anybody who wears red, just not a fan of that. Literally any red team I'm probably not a fan of, other than the Miami Heat. Love you. But they're the only ones. So, yeah, but in football specifically, no red teams. No. So, quickly.
Wait, you have red nails.
Because red nails are gorgeous. That has nothing to do with the teams that I cheer for, actually. But yeah, so it's all in love. It's all friendly, fire. We go at each other, but at the end of the day, it's still love. But when it's not love, then it's really not love. But yeah,
I would say that's what's fun about sports is a lot of it is just people there are some mean people out there, but usually when it's with your friends, it's funny, making fun of each other and kind of joking with each other. Some people will take it to heart, but for the most part, at least in our group of people that talk about it in the office, we're kind of joking and laughing with each other. And if your team's bad, we're bad. When we weren't bad this season, we knew we weren't bad. we knew we were bad. So it was well, okay,
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about some sports are player focused, some sports are team focused, but I have to be so for real with you. My biggest pet peeve in football is people that are fans of the players and not fans of the teams, but will say they're a fan of the team. That's at you Tom Brady fans, because I had a lot of friends that were fans. They were fans of the Patriots, and then as soon as Tom Brady left, they're suddenly Bucs fans. And so can you talk a little bit about like fan culture in terms of like fans of players versus fans of teams? And by the way, I'm wearing a Kyle Pitts jersey because I'm a fan of Kyle Pitts. I'm just saying, be straight up about it. Like, don't act like you're a fan of the team when you're a fan of the player.
Right. No, that happens a lot. I feel like it happens a little bit more in the NBA. Because I feel like players move a lot more in the NBA, I feel. And it's also a more individualized sport than it is, like, than football is. But that does happen quite a bit, especially, like, if it's a superstar of a player. Like my favorite player is Christian McCaffrey. He's now on the 49ers. No, I'm not a 49ers fan, but I will now root for them over other people, like, if they're playing, you know? So I feel like that's definitely a thing that like a lot of fans do, and it's not bad. I mean, I think it'd be best to like just be straight up about it, but yeah, that's just very common in like specifically NBA, I feel, though, but I think it happens in football as well. But Tom Brady's just one of those huge superstars that it's absolutely going to happen to.
I know in communications and at the agency, we always talk about brand loyalty, and outside of sports, I don't really experience that at all. But for sports, I'm very loyal to my teams, even when it came to when Dirk Nowitzki in like 2017, he was getting kind of old, and there were rumors he was going to leave. And even if he were to leave the Dallas Mavericks, like I was still going to root for the Mavericks regardless, and pull for him, of course. But my question for those fans who always are like root for the player is, okay, what happens when that player retires? Like when Tom Brady's retired now, like who are they rooting? Like who are these people rooting for? LeBron's going to retire soon. Like who are these LeBron fans going to root for? But I think there is a distinction. Like recently, the Dallas Mavericks just traded for Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving has a very big like fan base of just people who like Kyrie Irving. But there's a clear distinction between Mavericks fans and Kyrie Irving fans. And so we know that if he were to move on to a team in the future, they're going to go pack up and move with him. But I mean, I think it's been really great, that with like the introduction of free agency in sports, like throughout the 90s, that kind of gave players the ability to move teams. They've now really kind of been able to develop their own personal brands. And so you really get like, just from a communications perspective, like they no longer have to rely on like the team apparatus to support them in their, like off the field growth or off the court growth. Like now, Luka Doncic has his own brand. LeBron has his own shoe line. Every player has everything. And so I think it's really great just in terms of like a player empowerment sense. And obviously for communications professionals, it's really cool to kind of see the difference between how do teams market themselves versus how players market themselves, and sometimes how those like two competing strategies might come into conflict.
That's cool. That's so interesting. Yeah, I'm glad you brought up like the whole branding of them and like how like that's kind of my, I guess, perspective of sports is I'm not really involved, but I do like see commercials and I see like all these endorsements that they're doing. And so I feel like I get the perspective of seeing them as a brand, like these players mainly, not necessarily the teams. Like when I first think of football and like branding, I don't think of the teams, I think of the players. And like, I mean, you've thrown around names and like, honestly, I don't really know any of these people, but I feel like they do sound kind of familiar, just based off of like the sole branding of it. And I feel like that's kind of interesting.
I mean, you are starting to see teams start to create a brand for themselves, especially in the social media space. Like a lot of them have started creating their brand on TikTok, and people that have become fans of certain teams just solely based on like the TikTok content that they're putting out, or like they're like, if I was gonna root for a team, I'm gonna root for this team because they have like the funniest TikTok account or whatever. So you are seeing it like start to like take shape of seeing how they can like tap into the younger generation in that way, which is really interesting to see.
I mean, not to be very biased, but I think the Carolina Panthers also do a really good job at this. I love their memes after every win. They have like the funniest memes, and I think that they're really trying to like tap into that younger audience. But I think like another brand, not specifically a team or like a player, but the NFL themselves, like their TikTok, they are definitely marketing their TikTok to a specific audience, and you can tell now. But I think they're doing what they think they need to do to get that new audience, because a lot of people are tuning in, and so they want to engage them as well instead of, just engaging their like target demographic. They're trying to tap into that younger audience, that female audience. So I think they are doing a great job on TikTok with that. I love the NFL content on there. So yeah.
Honestly, I'm not very familiar with the NFL TikTok. I probably should have looked that up, but what kind of stuff do they post?
When Joe Burrow was blowing up, some Joe Burrow TikToks.
Like fan cams or
like
thirst traps?
thirst traps, fan cams, like the audio are actually insane. Like I remember like looking at videos and seeing like scrolling on my For You page and seeing a video of Joe Burrow, and I was like, oh, Joe Burrow, I love him, whatever. And I look and it's the NFL who posted it, and I was like, there's just no way. There's just no way. And then in the comments, like everyone's aware that they're doing this. Like everyone knows that they're doing it for a reason, because everyone's like, no way the NFL just posted that. Like, is this the real NFL account? Like, have they been hacked? It's like been a huge like thing. But I think I love that brands, specifically like the teams and like the NFL, so like the actual organizations, are doing this, because a lot of guys will be on TikTok now under their like comments and saying, why is the NFL doing this? Like, this is so stupid, or this is, yeah, because it's not for you, because they basically want everything that the NFL does to cater to them, and when it doesn't, then it's an issue. So that's something that happens all the time in like sports, specifically football. But once again, you kind of get used to it.
So, you know, as a woman myself, I'm always just sort of curious as to like how women are treated in like sports fandoms. I want to hear your perspective mainly, Chelsea, because I feel like football especially, but a lot of sports are very male dominated, and especially in their fandoms, very male dominated. And I've kind of like heard discourse on like social media about, you know, their male fans not really taking women fans as seriously when it comes to their opinions on certain takes. So I want to know like your kind of take on that.
Well, yeah, it is something, I will say. As a like woman and a fan of like football, I'm like very active. Like I talk a lot on social media, like Twitter mostly, or I'll argue with someone under like a Barstool post, like, because I think that's fun. But yes, you do get a lot of like, you get discredited a lot. They really don't think you know what you're talking about half the time, if not majority of the time. It can get frustrating, but I think they don't understand. I don't think they realize like how many women are fans of the NFL or fans of like sports until they actually see the numbers. So it is frustrating though, like arguing with someone and them saying, well, you're like a girl, you don't even know what you're talking about. And I'll say, wow, sir. But it's very common, and it's something like you kind of get used to. And like I feel like the type of men usually that I like interact with, it's not the majority of sports fans, but you do have like the bad apples that ruin the bunch. So, but it's something you get accustomed to pretty early. Like after a while, I just kind of ignore that, or if I'm feeling like it's going too far, I'll just delete my comment, so then the whole thread's gone or something. Like, yeah, sometimes I'll just disengage. Majority of the times I'm not disengaging. That's just because I love the drama of the, you know, I love the thrill of the argument. But yeah, it's pretty bad. Yeah, usually, specifically, I feel like I get it much more among like football male fans, but also I don't think I interact with basketball male fans as much. So that could also be it.
I will say the toughest thing about being like a female sports fan, and it's honestly across the board of like any fandom that's like male dominated, I mean even like in the MCU, is like name 3 players on that team.
So
do you know what I mean? Which is like people say is like such a classic thing, but like it really is, like that really does happen. Like we aren't just saying that just to say that. Like I get, oh, you only like that team because you think that player's attractive. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, yeah, sure, he's cute, but that's not why I like the team, you know? Or like you only like that superhero because you think he's attractive. And I'm like, well, yeah, they hired an attractive male for that reason, but like that's not why I like that character, that's not why I like that player. And to me that's like the most frustrating thing, because like I can't even be taken seriously because they think, oh, you just like that team or that player because they're attractive.
Don't even get me started.
I know you know.
I know that very well, because as someone who really likes sports, that's like the first thing they assume. I say, oh, my favorite player is Christian McCaffrey, and they're like, oh yeah, because he's hot.
Very shallow thinking.
Yeah.
They think we think so shallow.
Seriously, like, no. Maybe it's because he's probably one of the most dynamic running back in the entire NFL. Like, honestly, I think it's just, honestly, that infuriates me.
Yeah, it's like the thing that makes me the most mad.
It's bad. And like, yeah, they're attractive. Like, what do you want us to say about that? Like, if they're attractive, they are. Like, but that doesn't make them any less good at their sport, and it doesn't make me love them any more because they're attractive. Like, I like them because they're good at playing the game. Like, so that's very frustrating.
Okay, so my sister actually made a really interesting point after watching the first episode of Fan Take. Go check it out if you haven't watched it yet. But we talked about like football or sports, and we talked about fangirls and the kind of the parallels between. But my sister made an interesting point that when a boy attends a concert, like a Harry Styles concert, it's like celebrated celebrated, like, oh my gosh, a guy's at a Harry Styles concert. But when a girl attends a sporting event, it's like not celebrated. Sometimes it's like, oh, she's just here, you know, to check out the boys. Sometimes it's like, it's just not really acknowledged. So I just thought that was like an interesting like point that she made about like the differences in how we like celebrate when guys show up to like things that are considered like fangirl things, but like we don't do that the opposite way.
There's like this stereotype with men that they only like manly things. They can't like anything if it's like deemed soft or, you know, something like that. So if a guy shows up to like a Harry Styles concert, everyone's like, wow, like he's like so secure in his masculinity, like he doesn't care, like he can go. Whereas like when a girl goes to like a sporting event, well, duh, like she could already do that. Like that's not anything like special or important or new. So I feel like that's where that difference comes along. It's because I feel like when you talk about men and how they approach things, it's always like more of a manly sense or like toxically masculine, like stuff like that. Whereas like women are just like kind of, you know, they kind of do everything anyway. So to watch sports isn't like anything new or fresh for women to do.
So interesting that like they're, you know, everyone is kind of a fan of something and they're passionate about this something. Even though when you think of like fangirls and specifically fangirls of like male artists, they're seen as like crazy and obsessive and just like not right and dedicating their whole life to this person. Whereas, you know, male fans of sports, they're seen as passionate and, you know, they really love their team, even though most of the time I've seen videos of like when their sports team loses and they're breaking things, and that to me is crazy.
Yeah, like I do get what you're saying. Like women, when they like, especially if it's like male artists, like, oh my god, like why is she so like extra about it or this? No, but definitely though, being in the football world for as little as I've been, they definitely get backlash about it. I definitely give them backlash about it. The other day when the Cowboys lost in the playoffs, people were breaking TVs and running over TVs with their trucks and burning jerseys and doing a lot of stuff, doing a lot of crazy stuff. But like it happens a lot. Like it happens with a lot of sports teams. The Cowboys catches a lot of flack because, you know, they're really mean usually, the fans. But not all of them, but some of them are. A lot of them are. But yeah, so they definitely get some backlash about it because like some guys are just sports fanatics. Like you have people who like sports, they enjoy, they watch, you know, but there's guys like they make it their entire like life. Like they don't do anything else. Like all they do is watch. They have like Instagram pages dedicated to like yeah, like it can get bad. It can definitely be an obsession.
It's interesting you say the thing about like making pages, like
I know,
making fan pages. Like that's what we mean when we're saying like why do we not see it as the same? Because men, like grown men are making fan pages for players and for teams and then commenting on posts from that, similar to how young girls are making fan pages for, we're Harry Styles fans, so we're gonna use Harry in this example, but for Harry Styles, right? And like, oh, but it's crazy and obsessive when they do it, but when the guy does it, he's just a big fan of the team. Right. You know what I mean? Like, he's just passionate about the team. Right. So, like, it's just so interesting because there actually are so many parallels. We talked about this earlier, but, like, merch. Like, me wearing a shirt with an artist's face on it or from a concert is the equivalent of Jacob, that, like, sweatshirt, that hoodie that you're wearing. But we don't view them the same. We're like, oh, no, I'm just supporting my team and my player. Right. And it's like, yeah, no, we're supporting our team. We're Team Harry Styles. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing.
My favorite sports team.
So when I was 15, I actually had a Mavericks Instagram. I did. Like you're talking about, like making pages and stuff. That was me at 15. I like learned how to do like basic Photoshop to like do like the edits of like pre and post game stuff. I'd like do my own little analysis. I had like 1,500 like followers on Instagram. That was like my thing. I'd like one or two of the smaller, like the less known Mavericks players following my account. It was like really cool.
Wow, that's actually very impressive.
Yeah, no, and currently, I mean, like a quick plug, I do write for a Mavericks sports blog called at mavsfansforlife.com. But it's again not casual, you know. But again, like the sports used to determine my week. You know, I used to do all of these things, and I guess one quick parallel for fangirling. So the Mavericks play the Heat only once a year in Miami, and I started going when they would come when I was like 14 or 15. And every time after the game, my mom and I, because we kind of took that as like a mom-son thing, we would go out. So when you leave the game, like the players will kind of come out and go to their team bus and they're going to leave. And so there was like a home side and an away side. And so after every game, we'd always leave maybe like a minute early, because the Mavericks at that time would usually lose a lot of those games. We'd leave a little bit early, and we would go down and we'd wait by the away team for the players to come out. And one year, I think I was like 16. Finally. You know, because like sometimes they'll be disappointed if they lose. They just want to go straight to the bus. Like, I get it. It's late, whatever. You know, they have to fly home. But Dirk Nowitzki, my favorite athlete and the one who was on my home screen, which, you know, Mackenzie was, you know, picking on me for earlier, came up and he was signing jerseys. And I'm like this like beanpole 16, like awkward 16-year-old or whatever. And my mom goes like full mama bear, pushes me to the front against the fence. She's like pointing, like I'm like holding out my jersey, my thing. He's signing it. I'm like totally shell shocked. I'm like I was like so happy to have like met like I guess like my sports idol or whatever. And that's like a good parallel to like, you know, like getting like a signed thing from like Harry Styles or one of your other fans, one of the other you know, stars like that. So there's definitely a big parallel there. I do think there are easily some sports fans who take it over the top, and I can say that as a kid I was one of them. But, you know, obviously I think kind of just as you get older, you grow and mature. Those that don't probably should. Like it is, at the end of the day, it is sports. Like, you know, like it's not like make or break. But I think there are a lot of parallels in terms of like quote unquote fangirling. And it is interesting to see like how it's kind of viewed differently. But I've definitely had those moments. I went to, when Dirk Nowitzki retired 3 years ago, I went to his last game and cried. And then, which was great. He had like 20 points. He dunked. He's like 41 years old, dunking the ball. Like, you know, like that's like pretty hard for like a guy with like no knees. And then at the beginning of last year, I went to his jersey retirement. Like flew to Dallas, like to go, like, you know, they hang his jersey up in the rafters. No one will ever wear it again. Huge ceremony. And then this year they just built a statue, which I didn't go for that, but like, okay, I'll see it when I go back. But yeah, so like there's definitely is that element of fangirling. And like for me, like Dirk was, I guess, your version of Harry Styles. Like every time I could get to see him play, I would go. And when he signed my jersey, it was like when like I have that jersey framed, like in my house. It is framed in my house at home. Like a shadow box and everything. You know, and then being able to go see him play his last game and and go through like all of, like the pomp and like festivities of being one of the greatest players I've ever played has all been like just a really fun experience as a fan. And so there are some really interesting parallels with that.
Well, Chelsea, Jacob, thank you so much for coming on and teaching us so much about sports. I feel like I learned a lot. And thank you so much for watching.
And to keep up to date with who we bring on next, make sure to follow us on all of our social media at the agency at UF.
And always remember, who day? How about them Cowboys?
Keep pounding.
And go Gators!